Record. There we go. There's a lot of folks that aren't here today that would love this information, and so we want to make sure they can get it. So I had to hit record there. But on behalf of the entire Parks and Trails New York team, I want to thank you for joining us for the last workshop in our 2025 Friends to Friends series. So last one of 2025. For those of you, this might be your first Friends to Friends workshop. This series was really created to support friends groups, specifically DEC and OPRHP friends groups. But if you are not one of those buckets of folks, hopefully you'll still take away something very valuable from this conversation. And this is really created to support you. We're sharing best practices, innovative programming, collaboration. There's some ideas that'll be shared that you can take back to your organizations, some new strategies you can work with and share with your board. So very excited to connect with you today to continue this initiative. As always, we have a very exciting series of panelists on a variety of topics designed to increase capacity of your organizations and provide some opportunities for networking. So you will be able to come off mute in a little bit here and ask some questions after our presentations and connect with one another. But today's conversation I'm very excited about. So this builds on, if you joined us for our regional friends gatherings this fall, this conversation is a direct result of those conversations. So this fall we talked about marketing, promotion, and partnerships. And we're going to be expanding on those conversations today. So in all discussions with friends groups, one common conundrum or problem you run into really rises above the rest. And that's how do you recruit more people, especially younger folks, to your site and your organization. And one way, as we learned during these gatherings, is through marketing, simply getting the word out about your site, your organization, and the work that you're doing. And so we know that this isn't every group's strong suit, right? And that's where partnerships come in. And so even if you're a master at partnering and marketing, teamwork makes the dream work. So we're really going to learn more about who your local and regional tourism promotional partners are, why you should build a relationship with them, and how to do that. And we're going to share some success stories from friends, sites, and similar organizations that have used these partnerships and other partnerships to kind of get the word out about your organization. So our hope is really that you take away some helpful insight and information back to your groups, your site managers, and really use for future planning. So we shall dive in. You're going to get a lot more on that, but that was just a basic overview for you all. So if you joined us for these workshops, you know the drill, but just in case, to walk you through the agenda, in a minute, I'm going to turn it over to our featured presenters, and then we'll have some time after our two presenters to open up to Q&A, have you come off mute, ask some questions. But throughout the presentation, if you do have questions, feel free to throw them in that chat feature at the bottom of your screen. You'll see it there. You can ask any questions throughout the workshop, and then Jonathan, Duda, and I from PTNY are on the call. We'll be monitoring those questions, and we'll pose them to our panelists at the end. After that, I'll take a couple minutes just to wrap up with some next steps and things you can expect from us, some resources, as well as some upcoming events that we can plug you into. But if you're not familiar with Zoom, please just keep yourself on mute throughout the presentation until the end, and that way we can just keep the background noise to a minimum. Post those questions in the chat. If you have any technical difficulties, feel free to email John or myself or put that in the chat as well, and we should be able to help you. But really, this is a free-flowing kind of conversation, but we want to give some space for our presenters. So, but more importantly, we want to know who everyone is in the room. I mentioned there's a couple of new folks here. So let's do a little bit of icebreaker. If you could, in the chat, put your name, your organization, and then maybe one thing you're looking forward to finishing up the year on a good note. So if you could throw those in the chat, we can get a sense of everyone who's in the room today. But without further ado, I want most of this time to go to our featured presenters. So today we have with us Maeve McEneny Johnson. Maeve, you're going to have to let me know if I said your last name wrong there. But she is the Director of Community Engagement at Discover Albany, and she's been there since 2015. And her role continues to evolve. She wears many hats in the organization. She's the educator, coordinator of the City of Albany's Cultural Heritage and Tourism Plan, the vice chair of the Albany County Revolutionary War 250th Commission, and the director of the newly established Community Engagement Department. We've had the honor of having Maeve join us for our first gathering at Glimmerglass. So if you were there for that one, you have seen Maeve before. She's an incredibly engaging presenter. very fun, has a lot of experience in this realm, and we're very excited. This workshop was actually her idea. After our previous gathering, she said, "Hey, I really think we need to talk to friends groups more about this topic." And I said, "Absolutely." And she's like, "Can we come back?" And I'm like, "Come to a workshop." And so she is the reason we are here today. So very excited. So thank you, Maeve. And then we also have Kelly Adams. While Kelly's here wearing her public affairs hat and here to talk about her own experiences with partnerships as the public affairs coordinator for the Genesee region, Kelly is now officially, as of very recently, the new park manager for Letchworth State Park. So very excited to have her here today. She's going to share some successful partnerships from her role out in the Genesee region there. So first we're going to have Maeve, and then we'll turn it over to Kelly. But thank you both so much. And Maeve, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up? Great. All right. So we're going to do a quick screen share here. There we go. Oh, this is good. Share. Okay. All right. Do you see me and my lovely boyfriend there? Good. All
Yes.
right. All right. So hi everyone. As we mentioned before, I'm Maeve McEneny Johnson. I work at the Discover Albany Visitor Center. I'm the director of community engagement. I've been with the organization for 10 years, and this definition of DMO, destination marketing organizations, tourism promotion agencies, after 10 years, I think I just figured it out. It was really interesting when I came to speak to everybody. That was the core of our conversation was who are these organizations? How do I connect with them? So today we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive, but also some of the opportunities that can come with making these partnerships. But again, a little bit more about me in my background, because this idea of like a director of community engagement in this tourism marketing agency is a brand new concept. About a year ago, there was like a good handful of us in New York State, and then of course nationally, there's a group of us who now meet. But it's a new concept. How that position sort of came about is I was a local tour guide after I graduated college. You see me there. I was on the Albany Aqueducts and Trolleys. I rejected all things Albany history. My father's a local historian, which means no way, I'm not touching that. And so I rejected all things. I was English, I was education. But after college, I started doing tours, and I fell in love with Albany for myself. And I started doing tours. I started doing a deep dive. I was hired for Discover Albany. The visitor center used to have a planetarium up until 2020. And so I was the planetarium teacher, but then I don't quite know how it happened. But then I was told, you're now going to be the coordinator for the cultural and heritage tourism program in Albany, which receives some funding from the city of Albany. So, and just as a clarification, we promote at Discover Albany not just the city of Albany, but Albany County as a whole. But the city of Albany gave us that funding to promote heritage tourism because they saw Albany County promoting cultural heritage tourism specifically. You get higher dollar visitors, cultural heritage tourists stay longer, they spend more money. So it was an investment. So I was also creating tours, and that's where you see the gentleman in the funny hat. You know, as my role as an educator, I was creating history tours. I became more interested, less in me giving the tours and finding people more interesting than me to do the tours. So Albany's beer historian, we do have a beer historian. He wrote the book on Albany beer, Craig Gravina. So like identifying him, creating tours, creating a product with our craft beverage industry. So I started really connecting with my community, with the businesses. And then, you know, after 10 years, as this idea of community engagement was starting to impact the tourism sphere. Destinations International is a international group of DMOs, TPAs, and tourism stakeholders who meet. And they kind of put out the best practices for the industry. And the idea that tourism is a social impact, that it impacts the community. When I started 10 years ago, everything was heads and beds. And what heads and beds means is what we need to do is we need to get tourists in. They need to stay in the hotels because our funding with Discover Albany comes from hotel occupancy tax. We get 1% of it. Other destinations get more of it, but that's the thing. Like, that's our funding. Get them in the hotels and then get them out. But more and more, we're finding that tourism, and I'm probably speaking, preaching to the crowd here, tourism affects our community, our local businesses, thinking about things of bringing a convention in. If it's a large one, what is traffic? How does it impact the neighborhoods? Does it reflect our community? And so that's how this role of a community engagement has started to come into the industry. So just kind of a little bit of my background and where I'm coming from. And more destination marketing organizations are starting to hire community engagement and community manager. So you can kind of take a look when you look at job descriptions. There's more of us coming up. I'm not the only one anymore. So here are some definitions. There is not a test. Don't worry about it. But you've heard me drop some acronyms, the Tourism Promotion Agency, a TPA, a Destination Marketing Agency, your DMO, your Chamber of Commerce. Depending on your destination, either you have both of them, you have one of them. Sometimes they are the same. Discover Albany, we are Albany County's TPA and DMO, but others have them separate, right? So a DMO might focus more on getting the conventions there, the TPA, tourism itineraries, and sometimes smaller destinations, the Chamber of Commerce identifies them all. Are they pay to play? Sometimes, I wish there was one definition. Discover Albany, when I first started, it was to get on our website, you had to pay, the $150 or all the way up to $500. You got all these amenities. I've come in and blown all that up because as community engagement, I was like, this is not accessible. This is not reflective of my community. We had criticism that somebody looked up the best Italian and they were getting something like the Olive Garden because the Olive Garden could afford, but the mom and pop. So even that is moving away because we know that visitors want what is authentic. So for us, we do have free partnership opportunities. More of them are going that way. So it is one of those things, you would probably have to call and ask. But you're panicking. You're like, oh my gosh, how do I know who to contact? Which one do I do? Forget all these definitions I told you. Go to the next slide. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm doing the slides. I thought Sorry, everybody. So the next slide here, though, and Jonathan's going to drop the link in the chat. This is going to be your resource about who to contact. So the New York State Tourism Industry Association, NYSTIA is made up of people, your DMOs, TPAs, but there's also attractions that are there, all kinds of folks, marketing agencies, people who are devoted to promoting tourism. But this page here, this is helpful for two reasons. My friends groups who are in charge of writing the grants, right? If you hover over each one, we tried to do a screen share and it wasn't working, so you'll have to do this on your own. But if you hover over your county, right, it'll come up and it'll have a tourism impact. So it'll tell you the impact tourism dollars are having in your community. So if you're writing grants and you need that visitor data, boom, there it is. But more importantly, you scroll down and there's a contact person for marketing opportunities. So for me, if you hit Albany County, you'll see right there, Discover Albany, Jill Delaney, who's our CEO. So don't stress out about all those definitions, all those titles. I would say stick with this website, click it, and, that's the best way to find out who to contact. And again, this is an awesome resource, not only for your grants, but if you do any advocacy days, you can come with these kind of numbers prepared. So I just wanted to share that. That's a really helpful thing. And if you're really lost, and I talk to my colleagues, if people are like, I emailed and they didn't write me back and I don't know, Discover Albany staff have said, contact us, and we will help you navigate who to find because we are very connected, not just with Albany and Capital Region, but we're connected with our partners in New York State. So if you don't know who to contact and you can't find it on NYSDA's website, please do not hesitate to reach out to me and we'll make sure that happens. All right. Any questions on that? Because I think that's probably like the meatiest link before I move on. Yeah. Gil, was that a question you had?
Yeah,
Yeah.
may I? Or should I type it?
No, you can speak up.
Wonderful. I'm curious about the switch from heads and beds to, participating in the local economy. What
Yeah.
outside of conventions might that be?
It could be just, I mean, so that was the other thing too, is they were heads and beds really was convention business, wedding business. We kind of got out of that of the weddings, hotel blocks, things like that. It really, but that's as you say, well, what about everybody else? And that's what everybody else said. What about everybody else? So while the conventions and the heads and beds is important for us funding wise, and we're going to talk about this with the conventions. Really, what tourism starts is from the ground up. And that's where this community comes in. Is if a visitor comes to Albany and they say, what is there to do? And they ask a local, because that's what they do. And the local goes, nothing. It's boring. I failed at my job, right? So the idea of community engagement and where these DMOs are going is we have to get the local buy-in from everybody first, because then that's going to trickle up, and you never know who that person's like, which is what we're going to get into. I run this convention, and we've been looking for something for 2027, and Albany was really great. So everybody's kind of taking that step back and looking from the ground up. This is getting too much into the weeds. But another thing now that that was the trend, a couple years ago, and now everybody's sort of in their groove. We know the best practices for that. The next thing that's shifting, and this has happened since COVID, is it starts with a visit. And what it starts with a visit is that young travelers, Gen Z, some of the younger millennials, they're traveling for vacation. They go to a destination and they say, this place is really cool. I think I could get a job here. I think I could start a life here. And people were finding that, especially with remote work, is that people are coming with a visit first. They're looking for the amenities, and the amenities are cultural heritage tourism, arts, trails, things like that. And then they might make that decision, and we're seeing this more and more, to live here and build into the economy. So that's another sort of interesting thing that the industry is changing. All right. All right. So going back, right? So now you know how to find us. You know where to link to us. Now, what do you do with a DMO and a TPA? So the first thing you want to make sure you do is get on your calendar, right? Get on the calendar. So of course I use Discover Albany. We have amenities like our events calendar. The events calendar is our number one clicked asset on our website because that's what people want to do. They're planning their trip and they want to see what's going on that weekend. Locals go there all the time to see as they're planning to take their friends out, or they'll filter by family events. So that is a very basic thing you want to make sure that you can do. The listing is really important. So you can see at the bottom of my picture with the cute doggy in the costume, we have different links. I didn't put all of them there. So, a lot of times people think, especially if you're a heritage site, they say, oh, okay, well, you do history tours and you're open, Monday to Friday, sometimes Saturdays, but maybe you're a wedding venue. Maybe you're a creative meeting space. There's all these different things that, as you know, with your space, you do more than just tours. You're more than just a public space for tourists. There are rental amenities. So you want to make sure that those amenities are listed, right? So you might want to click around, like if there is a page for weddings and you're a wedding venue and you're not there, you're going to want to reach out to your TPA DMO to say, hey, we're a creative meeting space. We want to be on there. Some spaces, you're an indoor attraction, you're an outdoor attraction. So it's going in there and just making sure your listing is up to date. I did put the commissions there because I know some people will kind of look up to the tippy top and you say, "Ooh, film, TV, and sports." We do have a sports commissioner and a film commissioner. And the film commissioner, Albany, we've had the Gilded Age filming here, but we've had a couple of movies like, The Punisher, the other guys. So Deb Gedeke is that person who she's got very trusted, confidential relationships with a lot of these folks. But it's good to know if you see there's a film commission, she gets asked all kinds of crazy questions. Is there an 18th century, 19th century dining room with a this? If that's something you're amenable to, just see who those folks are and say, "Hey, have you ever been to my space?" We could be an interesting asset. Itineraries, which are really important for us. We put a lot of our itineraries on our blogs, but we also put them on social media. Itineraries pre-COVID were going a little by the wayside because the travelers were like, we just want to do it ourselves and we want to discover it ourselves. That has switched since COVID. I'm not 100% sure why. We do a lot of events in Halloween, and we did a promotional campaign with Miss New York, and Miss New York did a Instagram reel where she's like, "And I went here, and I went here, and I went here," and we got a lot of texts from like people on Instagram writing us going, "Can you send me that itinerary?" Because now the travelers are like, "Just think for me." I'm exhausted. Like, just think for me. So we have gone back to itineraries. For us, they live on our blogs, but it could be anything. Some destinations, their DMO has an app, the trails. So click around on the website, see what amenities and opportunities they have on their website. And if you are not listed, do not hesitate to reach out and make sure you are listed, because that means that the DMO and the TPA isn't aware of everything that you do. So invite them over, tell them what you do so that they can be aware. And what can you do for us, right? So, Discover Albany, I'm showing you all these cool things. They are a marketing department of two. We have two people, so they can't go and do everything. So things that you can do, if you have somebody who's actively updating Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, make sure you tag your DMO, or you're right. That's really important because then that gets on their radar. They may not know, they're doing their best to keep up with the events calendar and all of that, but this gets right in their face right away. So that's a great way to be able to stay connected, is if you are able to tag us. Kelly's going to get into the partner events, and those who came to the meeting where we first met, I dove into it, a lot of it. But there are places where if you know an opportunity is coming up that will have tourism impact, and your TPA is not promoting that at all, you can reach out to them and say, "Hey, this is going on. Do you know that there's going to be an impact?" And they're going to want to know about that, which we're kind of digging into in my next slide. And then intellectual capital is another hot buzzword and that's going to be more for the folks who are booking conventions. And I'm going to get into that when we get into it, but I want to stick with these partner events for a moment. So an example is, when I was just the Heritage Tourism Coordinator, I had a lot more free time to kind of create the itineraries myself. I would meet with my heritage partners and we would come up with, we did literary tours and the beer tour and all these different tours. And my responsibilities have grown. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to dedicate as much individual time as possible. But thankfully, my heritage partners are not letting me off the hook, because they've been, especially this year, have been reaching out to me and saying, "Maeve, this is happening. It is high impact, but we need help. We can't do it ourselves." So one of the programs was Juneteenth. So June, our DMO has always been focused in June on Pride, as we should. We have the oldest LGBTQ center, resource center in the United States, I believe, definitely New York State. We have wonderful history. So that's where all of our energy was going into. And our friends at the Underground Railroad Education Center reached out and they said, we have we have multiple Juneteenth celebrations happening at the same time. There's concerts. We have the African American Heritage Parade, and they all happen over the same weekend. Is there any way you could help us get an itinerary and market to the Albany community that this is available to them, that there's tons of programming? And we said, yeah, that sounds great. My friends, it we learned so much because it wasn't just one weekend, it was a whole month of Juneteenth programming. And Juneteenth and Pride calendars were simultaneously promoted, and Albany was the coolest destination in June. There were parades, multiple parades. There were tons of events, food events, parties, the whole month. The trolley that I featured, that was something that they always struggled with. And this might be a little bit of like, not every DMO could do this, but they always had a trolley that would on the day of the parade that would go to different heritage sites and to the other Juneteenth events. But the trolley drivers, no matter what they did, they would give them the schedule, they would give them all of that. And every year, the trolley drivers got confused and it didn't work very well. I was able to ride on the trolley. And I said, I will make sure that I am on there to make sure it knows where it's going, it knows the route, and it gets to where it needs to go. Because for me, it was most important that the visitors had a positive experience. And as many of you know, you have one negative experience, that can color the whole thing. They could have had a great time at the parade, but if they didn't get to 10 Brook Mansion at 10 o'clock like was scheduled, that's it. The whole thing they'll say was a wash. So while you may not have someone who could ride the trolley, but going to that marketing agency and saying, hey guys, this is a really great opportunity. We've hit our bandwidth. Can you help us troubleshoot? And that was a solution. And we were able to get itineraries out and schedules for everybody. The same thing happened with Seneca Chief. I don't know how many of you were impacted by the Erie Canal replica boat for the bicentennial. It stopped at different river locations. It was coming to Albany. It is not intuitive to get down to our riverfront. So, not only was Buffalo Maritime Museum reaching out to us saying we need help getting the word out, but then we pulled together our Erie Canal partners like the Irish American Heritage Museum, Underground Railroad jumped in again, a lot of partners who came together to make that happen. But I wanted to point these out because these were heritage partners who came to the DMO first saying, we need help, and showed us that this was going to be impactful, and we were able to try to make the best visitor experience we could. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. Now, so this is specifically, your destination marketing organizations. These are the folks who are interested in getting the conferences. And I think that Discover Albany does a really good job of using you, our intellectual capital, the people who are the experts in a subject matter. This trend is that there are conferences that come in that appear very esoteric, and my friends who are in parks and cultural heritage tourism, we love esoteric, right? We love it, like what that nobody else in the whole world knows. So there is a shift and there's a push to have people who are booking these conventions to go right to the source, to the expert people who can help close that business. And you are the expert people in your space. And you may say, well, who would want to come to us? And a convention doesn't need to be hundreds of people. A convention, and you say, oh, we're small. Sometimes it is a meeting space. It can be anything from 25, 30 people to these 100 plus events. So please don't discount yourself because there are groups that will come. You just have to kind of think about your scale. So there was a group, the U.S. Historic Naval Ships Association, and this was actually the USS Slater was connected with this group. They knew the group was looking for a conference and they really wanted to host the conference. So they went to our sales and services team. They're the folks who manage these conventions. And they went to them and said, we think we have an opportunity. Can you help us? And together they worked and they got this group. And it was, he didn't give me the numbers, Jay's our sales manager, but it was, 100 plus folks who came, and they're still talking about this convention, that they've gone to other destinations, obviously since, but I guess at the 2025, they said, wow, Albany did such a great job. But it came from, and our sales and services team say this, but it came from this heritage partner who had a unique opportunity and they wanted this and they knew to come to us to kind of help organize it. Coincidentally, there was another marine event that was happening, which was the 19th National Exhibition of the American Society of Marine Artists. So they were not connected to that other USS Slater event, but it was a happy coincidence. So some folks were able to go from one convention to the next. But this was a group of artists who came. And again, it was the Albany Institute who recognized this group. They were bringing them in, but then it was coming to Discover Albany and saying, can you help us with the hotels? Can you help us get them visitor guides? Can you help us make this the best experience? And they really did. And then that exhibit was something that the museum was able to keep for about half of the year. So it wasn't just like a one-off thing. They brought in the exhibit, and multiple people could enjoy it, including that other convention. I love this one. Because let's talk about esoteric, right? The Albany Pine Bush. It's home of the beautiful Karner Blue, all of this. They also burn it once a year. And they have to burn it, right? It is part of, and I'm not a scientist, so those of you who are part of parks, but they were able to, there was this piece of business that Discover Albany knew about, and they were able to connect, but it was the Pine Bush who helped close the deal. Textile Society of America, historic Cherry Hill, 75 plus attendees. But my favorite is the antique doorknob collectors. And this one was one where the sales team came to me and they said, do we have doorknobs in Albany? I'm like, do we ever? Historic Albany Foundation, they have salvage. They have hundreds of doorknobs that you can buy. You go to the Capitol building, they have the seal on the doorknobs. I used to give tours there. People go wild. And so they came, and that was wildly impactful, especially in 2021. So again, like, don't sell yourself short. You just don't know what you have, but let us know what you have, because again, our sales team came to me going, what do you know about this? And it turned out I knew a lot about doorknobs. I was the keynote speaker for this talk. So that's kind of what I have in our back pocket. But again, so much of this is like, how do I navigate? Please, I asked my team, everybody said, contact us. You don't have to be from Albany County. We want to help you.
Thank you, Maeve. Before we move on, I think there's a very good question in the chat here. I know we said questions for the end, but I think that you could help elaborate on a little bit before we transition to Kelly. And the question is from Colette, and I think you're not alone in this, Colette, but she mentioned they're in a very small town within Saratoga County, but less than 30 minutes from Lake George and only 45 from Albany. And unfortunately, are often told they cannot put their events on their DMO's calendars, only Saratoga. And any tips on how they can get on nearby calendar sites should someone want to make a longer drive for a unique experience?
Colette, if you will email me, because I feel like this is definitely, and anybody who has that question, let's do that. We also manage a site called the Capital Saratoga Region. And that is, as I understand it, that is supposed to help some of that. Because, yeah, for us, like, we're Albany County. If our friends from Schenectady County want to add an event on our website, we say no, because we are specifically Albany County. We do have the pay to play for that for out of county. But as a small organization, I hesitate to say, pay for it, right? Because that's not an option for everybody. So You can look to see if you can pay to be on their calendar and to pay to be a partner. I would look at the Capital Saratoga Region's website, but please email me some of your, like, where your location is and who your closest DMOs, TPAs are. And then I'll kind of escalate that to our marketing team because we do work with that Cap Saratoga region. That's a great question.
Thanks, Maeve. And just to reiterate for folks that are feeling like this might be a lot of information and you don't know who to connect with, it sounds like, beyond just your very local county or city DMOs, there are regional partnerships that
Mhm.
happen that folks that we can help you find the answer to. So if you go on that NYSDA and you're not getting right answers from someone directly within your little area, Maeve is offered to help, and then
Mhm.
PTNY is always a resource. We can knock on some doors and help you
And
find the
and
folks.
Nicea too. If you just want to like go right to Nicea, Bob Provost, he's like the nicest, and that was his whole thing. He set this up, that he wanted these resources, especially for our small destinations, to try to make it as easy as possible. It used to be that the DMOs and the TPAs were the keepers of economic impact. Like, no, put it on the website. It's yours to download. So there are a lot of friends out here. If we're not answering the questions, our door is open to make sure we can find the people who can answer your questions.
Thank you so much. All right. And someone with regional experience, we do have Kelly here. And Maeve, I believe you're sticking around for questions at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. So I'm
Perfect.
going to stop sharing.
All right. Thank you. And we'll turn it over to Kelly.
Clapping for that. That was amazing, Maeve. Awesome, awesome. Hard act to follow. Come on. Hi everybody. I'm Kelly Adams. I'm currently trying to share my screen right now. Just give me one moment. Happy to see you all. Let me just verify that once I put this in. Can you see my presentation? Hopefully, maybe.
Right
If
now, I
not,
only see my face frozen on your screen.
oh, it's okay. Hold on. Hold on. Everybody hold. Pause for effect. Anyway, I am Kelly Adams. I am just moved over from my public affairs role, literally probably 3 weeks ago now. But I am doing a presentation on the success in collaboration. Pause again for thank you guys for your patience.
No worries. We know it worked earlier, so we can make it happen.
Okay, we got this. Let's do that. Enter full.
There you go.
Perfect. Okay. And okay, got this. Perfect. Okay. So again, thank you all for being here today. My goal is to help you guys discover ways as friends groups to partner with parks, local tourism, and marketing organizations to reach more visitors and strengthen the community. So again, who am I? I am Kelly Adams. My previous role in public affairs that started in October of 2023 up until November of 2025. And previous to that, I was the Letchworth campground supervisor. So pretty local to Letchworth. But when I was the public affairs coordinator, I oversaw the 5 parks in our region. And this one is this role as public affair for the Genesee region is a little bit unique. Not every region has somebody that solely is devoted to public affairs. We have our wonderful staff in Albany that are public affairs, and then there's a political appointee in Niagara. But other than that, I believe I'm still the only, or this role is still the only one in the agency. And we just got a backfill, which is very exciting. So a lot of what I share today is based on my own experience within our region, with my wonderful friends groups, the TPAs, and more. But so your situation might look a little different, but it might inspire you guys as you go through and form these partnerships. So the first, I guess Maeve did such a good job explaining all of this. And I just want to thank you, Maeve, again, because you taught me something. A lot of what I had learned as I was going, I had to start from the ground up myself. There was a lot that all of this, I had no idea how that worked. So I had to social media counterpart who had worked in news was able to kind of guide me a little bit, but I didn't even know about the NYSDA. So that's amazing. So learning new things. And also as an agency, we're always learning new things as well. There's just so much to know. So this is how I will help. The one thing I will say is that as parks, we rely very much on our partnerships, on our friends groups like you guys. We really just appreciate all the work you guys do. And the other partnerships that we have community based. Maeve said it best, just in the sense of everything is, community. And that's what's really important. And you guys help bridge the gaps for us in parks. Everybody comes to parks, but you guys help make it happen. So I'm going to jump into my real world examples. The E word that nobody wanted to hear if you were in the path of totality for the eclipse of 2024. Dun, dun, dun. It was one of my very first undertakings as public affairs. When I started in this role, I was helping with the eclipse in April. As a result, I was featured in the pre and post eclipse in the newsletter for the CSEA Union, and I was on their calendar because there was so much collaboration with that, so much planning. This is probably a perfect example of Maeve talking about, what's an event that will bring the whole community together. The eclipse definitely did that. We know that the people are going to be coming to parks to come and watch this beautiful phenomenon, and where are they going to stay? Where are they going to eat? So a lot of it was the buy-in of, we had our seat at the table at any meeting that we could be at, just to make sure that, hey, let's all talk. Communication is key. This is one thing I might continue to mention, is that we are so oversaturated with information, social media, everything. There's so many different avenues and places that you can get your information. And this is one of those big things that's important for partnership. You want everybody to have the same information. A lot of the stuff, depending on what it is, different events, it might come straight from the parks first, and then you guys share that out, and then we continue down the partners to spread the word. I actually interviewed with Eric Zuch of Wyoming County, which is now Explore Letchworth and Beyond. Let's see if I can click on that. If not, we'll see. Oops. Can you guys still see? Can you see the video, Shayna? You let me know.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see if this works. I'll just play a little bit of it just so you see what this looks like. You could tell Eric and I don't like each other. That's hopefully, yeah. Maybe we'll.
Oh, no volume though.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yep.
well, it's trying, but could you hear it now? If not,
No.
all right. Sorry about that. I will send the link if you guys want to see it. If not, is it back on the PowerPoint, Shayna?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, guys. I apologize. But yeah, so I had an interview with Eric Zuch where he was asking about, what to expect the day of the eclipse. Where's the best place to view in the park? And it was just an opportunity because, again, as parks, we're what bridges the gap. We don't necessarily see the county lines, and that's a lot of where the challenges can come into play, because Letchworth specifically is in two counties. It's in Livingston County and Wyoming County. We have the Genesee Valley Greenway that's in multiple counties as well. So sometimes that can be a challenge. But us as parks, we talk about parks as a whole because that's what we do as an agency. So when it comes to the eclipse, it was a platform to be able to talk about what we're able to do for people in these types of events. Our counties actually branded for the eclipse, so they each had a little bit of something different going on to bring people to those areas, but they all donated free branded eclipse glasses to the park for our viewers. Unfortunately, because of the weather, we didn't get as many people as we had hoped, but we still had a wonderful day, beautiful day. And that was what was most important, was that the community was ready for it. We did planning up to, it was probably 6 months before that, probably even more, just looking into how this can impact our communities. And we were preparing for the worst, just because you have to be ready for that when it comes to the safety of patrons coming into these areas, but we were ready for it. So let me go to the next place. So another big event that we all probably already know about was the New York State Park Centennial that happened last year. A lot of because I was in this role, I was able to help facilitate and plan how, if there was already a party, a celebration that these parks already had, or they didn't, let's start brainstorming and thinking about how we can have a great celebration in these places, highlight different things that were happening in the parks, or just highlight, hey, you're here. This is local, especially bringing local people in. A lot of our parks here are rural, so we're really trying to get our local communities in these parks too, because again, you have Niagara Falls in your backyard, or Hamilton Beach. Sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to go to the falls. That's where the tourists are. But that's not always the case for some of our state parks. But we still have more than just the falls or just, the beachfront. There's so much more to that. So Hamlin Beach actually hosted their bash at the beach. The bash at the beach, and they were able to incorporate a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Momi bats that they were able to get a grant from PTNY for. So we did a ribbon cutting event for that. They had Empire Jeeps come in for a car show. Blue Sky of Rochester came in. So they were just making a celebration bigger and better. They hosted a sandcastle event for the kids, make it family oriented, make it something that, we did try to incorporate different interesting things to that event, but because it was a rainy day, some of the people that we were trying to bring into the park weren't available. But kind of think outside the box, because again, we're oversaturated with information and there's just so many different avenues you can get people in the park. So you'll see down below Lakeside. Lakeside is one of our parks that is not as lucky to have a friends group. And so a lot of what the manager and the office assistant had to do was what you guys would necessarily be doing, going out into the community. So they created Block Party at the Lake. So that was really like, hey, what do we do at a block party? Let's contact our local fire department. Let's contact the police. So police weren't able to come, but we had a lot of internal tabling. We had our educators out representing parks. We had our park police doing a drone demonstration. Of course, there were food trucks. We had music. Braddock Bay, the research for raptors, they were there. That was my favorite. They had owls out. That was cool. And then Letchworth had their New York State Parks Legacy Celebration. And again, that was a huge day, a very big undertaking. The Friends did a wonderful job combining the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps legacy celebration into this event to have more outreach. We find that a lot of people don't necessarily know the history of the CCC and that they were here and they did a lot of that work. So we were able to incorporate that. The Friends were able to provide on the main celebration side up on the north end of the park. They supplied the entertainment. So the balloon making, the face painting, the guys that were juggling, that was so much fun. And then we had our local businesses and partners come in. We had LiveCo come in. We had Explore Letchworth and Beyond come in table. We had Genesee Country Village and Museum. And a lot of them we try to encourage, don't just table, come and do some sort of activity, right? Because you hear tabling, it's not always as exciting. But if you say, hey, we want you to be an activity leader, when you come in and you have things, you want to give things out, teach them something as well, hopefully about outdoors. So like Endlessly Outdoors, you'll see she's actually showing people how to use a fire starter. So it was more interactive, but again, just getting people out and enjoying the community in general. And then we had fireworks, of course, for most of these events. So that's just a scratch on the surface of that one. And then the Genesee Valley Greenway had a cycle challenge. It's their second annual this year. And that is a partnership between the Friends and the Trail Towns, and then of course Parks. And they work together to make this beautiful family-friendly 10-mile bike ride from going through all these trail towns, one up from Scottsville down to Avon Driving Park. And so just bringing people together, driving through these areas. And then at the end, at the finish line, they have this wonderful celebration where there's more tabling. There's more people represented. They got food trucks. They had somebody doing the massages this year. And then there was the horses were the the equestrians were doing a horse etiquette demonstration. That is a big thing that is close to our hearts on the Genesee Valley Greenway. It's a multi-use trail. And so just the divide between cyclists and horses, we're just trying to get more education out to people. So our biggest goal is to have education on the side of that. So it was a wonderful day, and they were also able to do a ribbon cutting event for a water station that was installed in Erie Attica along with a kiosk. So that was another way to incorporate, let's make it big. If we're going to have some sort of celebration, let's just make it big. So and now this is touching on Hamlin Beach. They have a ongoing project of the Hexagon building that was a former concession stand in the 90s. They received a grant to help update the building. It was supported from New York Parks and Trails partnership grants and New York Environmental Protection Fund. It supported the first phase of the updates in the bathroom, hydration station, sidewalks, and such. So this is super exciting. It's ongoing. I can't wait to see what this building ends up looking like. But this was a collaborative project between Parks, the Friends, and then PTNY. And so that's another example. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure we have enough time for questions. This is one that's pretty unique. So Letchworth's colored map is a collaborative effort between Parks, Wyoming County, and Livingston County. So they don't often partner together because, again, like Maeve was talking about, some are still focused on how much money they're making. So it's sometimes hard to get these people in the same room. But we love them all. We love their energy. And now this was a wonderful opportunity for not just us to present a wonderful colored map for our park patrons and anybody that comes to their visitor centers, but it also gives them an outlet to be able to sell some space on the back of the map to be able to help pay for it. And they also help fund this. So we split it 3 ways, I believe, to be able to fund this map. But it's a cool way to show how these, how partnerships can collaborate. And then last but not least is just a labor of love for me. And this is more of a partnership between us and our friends groups. So we just, with the help of the friends, I had assisted in revamping our driving tour guide or driving tour, which is basically just as you come in, you're able to look at this and have an interactive drive-through map where we don't always have our education or interpretive department available, but this is something where the funding, I believe it costs $10 to buy it. All of the funding goes towards right back to our friends group. So partnerships work both ways. And that's the biggest thing on my end of things is that, the friends do so much for us. So we do as much as we can to help you guys. And we appreciate you all so much. And so now what? You have all of this information. This is kind of another aspect of what Maeve had already touched on, but if you haven't already, make your first connection in your areas. Utilize the Nastia, figure out who you're able to contact. I had to do a lot of emailing and calling around just to get those names, but now we have a resource. I'm sure it was always there. It's just wonderful to know. Make the first connection. Let them know who you guys are, what kind of stories, what events you want to host, how can you fit into their current promotion. Just get the ball rolling. Share good content. This is a very close one to my heart, just with social media. Share high quality photos, event details, short stories, volunteer. Again, everything when it comes to the partnership, it's more community based. We have so much oversaturation with social media. It's always changing. The partnerships, different aspects to different things might always be changing. So just keep up with that as well on the social media side. It's always changing. And then co-promote events, just like we were talking about the Centennial event. We were talking about the eclipse even a little bit. And so go into those events and just make those connections, make them positive, and continue those connections, even if you're not having those events. Attend their events. That's a big one too. We have, again, partnerships work both ways. they come and provide a service for us. They come and support us at these different events. We should be going to support them as well. Go to meetings, the chamber breakfasts if they have any. But yeah, it's just visibility that builds relationships, and that's the most important thing. Continue to think long term. Again, I touched on this a little bit, but when it comes down to it, it's things are forever changing, but you still want to maintain these relationships as things change. Seek feedback and adapt. Again, open conversations with your partners. Sometimes, we as the state can be limited in what we're able to do. Friends groups or other partners are able to help bridge the gap when we are unable to. I think that might be it. Yeah, the other thing I did write down as Maeve was speaking about events calendars. One thing I wanted to mention when you are planning to do events, communication again is key in these partnerships. You want to make sure that if you're planning an event, you're asking the local communities, your TPAs, your chamber, DMOs, if you're planning on doing any partnership co-hosted events or anything, or just something on your own, tell them the dates you're thinking of, because you never want to be taking something away from the community. If there's already, hey, you're trying to have a party, that was a big thing for the centennial. Hey, we're trying to have a party, we're trying to figure out the best date for this, what would this look like? And then they might say, hey, that's like a day like the farmers market is here, or somebody's already doing food truck Fridays that day. So you really want to be taking a temperature, taking a pulse of your community, because you want to be establishing those relationships and keeping them positive, because again, we're all in this together. Parks is, I could say, Parks on my end of things, it brings us all together. So, being able to bridge the gap, having these partnerships is imperative, just because we as Parks can't do it all alone. I know you guys can't do it all alone. But yeah, keep that narrative and continue to, it's overwhelming a little bit, again, the oversaturation of how much information there is, but just keep an open mind and know that things continue to change. They will always evolve, but just, take a pulse of that, so how to better be prepared as you go into these partnerships. So that is all I have. Thank you guys for your time. And yes, any questions?
Thank you so much, Kelly. Appreciate you both, you and Maeve. This was really helpful information. I threw the follow-up in the chat real quick about what's coming. You can expect an email from me early next week with all of this information, all the presentations. So if you didn't get any notes, that is okay. It's all coming your way. And then there are 2 plugs in there for upcoming events, especially Park and Public Land Advocacy Day in February. I know that we only have 1 minute left. You know that these 2 presenters will be around, and we can channel any questions to them that you might have. But if folks are willing to stick around for a couple of minutes and ask questions, feel free to drop if you need. But I think, we might be able to stick around for a couple more minutes if there's any burning questions.
There was one in the chat there for Kelly, and it was regarding a video trail. So let me just
Sharing the trails.
Sharing the trails video, if how it's going, and will that be available to be shared at some point soon?
Gotcha. Hi, Pauline. Hi. So just a little background on this. So we, again, multi-use trail. I touched on it a little bit with the equestrian use, multi-use. We talk about trail etiquette a lot. This is a labor of love. This is a project that's very near and dear to the Genesee Valley Greenway, because we have a lot of equestrians that utilize the trail. And just like everything else, there's so many more people, especially since COVID. We've seen this since COVID, that there are more people recreating that might not have before. And it might not even just be that, but people don't necessarily know trail etiquette. So educating our patrons is really a big thing. So we've been partnering to try to get a horse etiquette video out to the masses. And Pauline, that is still on it's currently on the back burner, but we are ready with the script. It just has to be filmed. But now there is a a backfill for my job as so there is a new public affairs person for the Genesee region. She is dipping her toes in very slowly, but that will be coming. But yeah, another great opportunity for partnership and local buy-in. There are a lot of people that are involved in that partnership and that project. So thank you, Pauline.
Thank you, Kelly. As president of the New York State Horse Council and participant of the part of the filming of that video, I'd like to have the opportunity to perhaps review it before it goes to publication, and then we would be glad to share it across the state as well on the New York State Horse Council sites.
Absolutely. Yep. This was when we had worked on the script, we had worked with New York State Parks specifically, and then a couple of other people that were on that meeting. I will definitely make sure to send that to you as it progresses.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any final questions for our two presenters today? Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for taking your lunch hour to spend with us. I will make sure you get all of this information and any questions you have about this. We know it's complicated. An hour is not enough to fit it all in. And I hope you're not discouraged. I hope you're excited and have some great ideas to move forward, but we can be your resources as you take this on. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.